A diplomatic breakdown in the Gulf. Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the UAE, Yemen, as well as Egypt and Libya have all severed ties with Qatar. And air, land and sea shutdowns are underway too. The nations say it's for their own national security, but what's really in play and at stake amongst these Gulf neighbours? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Kamahl Santamaria. So we know there's a diplomatic rift in the Gulf. We know it's been building for some time. But even with that knowledge, the events of Monday morning came as a surprise. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Egypt all abruptly cut off diplomatic ties with Qatar. But it is more than just recalling ambassadors. Land and sea borders have been closed, which, as you can see on the map, leaves Qatar pretty isolated. On top of that, major airlines are cancelling their routes in and out of Doha. And Qatar residents have 2 weeks to leave the 3 Gulf states in question. Here's the official line from Saudi Arabia's state news agency. It is, quote, urging all brotherly countries and companies to do the same. And actually, Yemen and Libya and the Maldives have already answered that call. Why? Well, Saudi Arabia says it's because Qatar harbours a multitude of terrorist and sectarian groups that aim to create instability in the region. Qatar's cabinet didn't immediately respond, but when it did, it said the decision to sever ties was unjustified and based on lies. The cabinet said the aim is to strip Qatar of its sovereign decisions. The Foreign Ministry also made a statement saying the aim is clear and it is to impose guardianship on the state. This by itself is a violation of Qatar's sovereignty as a state. As for retaliation, the ministry says the Arab nations' decisions would, quote, not affect the normal lives of citizens and residents in Qatar. So that is local reaction, but the Gulf is, of course, of huge relevance to the rest of the world. GCC politics affects everything: oil prices, economy, global security. The US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has urged the GCC countries to stay united in the face of terrorism.
We certainly would encourage the parties to sit down together and address these differences. And if there's any role that we can play in terms of helping them address those, we think it is important that the GCC remain unified. I do not expect that this will have any significant impact, if any impact at all, on the unified fight against terrorism in the region or globally.
So let's just backtrack a little bit, because I said at the top of the show that this has been building for some time. If we go back a little bit, most of the countries involved were at the Riyadh summit in May, but events there suggested a shifting of alliances. The US, the UAE, Saudi Arabia on one side, Qatar very much out of the club. Days later, the Qatar news agency posted a video that said the Qatari emir had made statements that were pro-Iran, pro-Israel, anti-US President Donald Trump, and supportive of groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. The Qatar news agency says it had been hacked. The damage, though, was already done. The other Gulf countries immediately launched a fierce media campaign against Qatar. And then on Saturday, emails were leaked from the inbox of the UAE's ambassador to the United States, suggesting the Emiratis have been working with Israeli think tanks and have actually tried to hurt the reputation of Kuwait and Qatar. Okay, so we've got 3 guests to work through all of this today. Here in the studio with me is Abdulaziz Alhorr, who's an academic and a researcher. Abdulaziz, a contributor to the book Policymaking in Transformative State, The Case of Qatar. Then in London, we have David Hurst. He is the editor-in-chief of Middle East Eye, an independent news website. And also rounding out the panel here in Doha is Mahjoub Zouairi, the Associate Professor of Contemporary History of the Middle East at Qatar University. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. I like to start discussions like this with one question for all 3 of you. So a quick response from all 3 of you to the same question. As I said, we know this has been building. Abdulaziz, I'll start with you. We know this has been building. But did you see this coming? Something so coordinated, so fast? I mean, this happened at 5 in the morning Doha time. Did you expect this level of response?
Actually, I did not expect the speed up of the events to reach this status at this time, especially that for the last 20 years, Qatar has been positioning itself as a peacemaker. It's not by talk, it's by work, actually. You know, the Qatar contribution contribution to the Sudanese Darfur conflict, to Eritrea, to Lebanon, to so many areas in Africa, in Asia, in the Middle East. Such a small country that would like to maintain good relationship with the neighbors, GCC, Iraq, Iran, Turkey, and other countries. This is what this country has been trying to do for the last 20 years, actually, in terms of policies, in terms of actions, in terms of behaviors and contributions. Therefore, I did not expect in return that this would happen at this time.
David Hurst, your initial thoughts, was it building to this?
Yes, it was, and I wrote a column about it a few days ago, sort of predicting what was going to happen, although obviously I didn't get all the details right. I think this is a pretty major event. It's not a spat, it's a pre-planned operation. I think the trigger for it was the visit of Donald Trump, who basically gave a green light to Mohammed bin Zayed and Mohammed bin Salman. But it had been prepared in the American press before with a lot of Emirati money and involvement. There were 14 different op-eds written about Qatar, which is very strange because the American press doesn't really, or certainly the opinion columns of the American press doesn't really bother itself about Qatar. So this is an operation. And I think the end result could be either Qatar radically changing its policy or regime change in Qatar. And if that is the case, this could be one of the last programs of a program called Inside Story. I think in future, programs like this would be called Mohammed bin Salman's story.
Goodness me, I just don't know what to say to that, David. Mahjoub Sweri, let's bring you in. What did you think when you woke up at 6 o'clock this morning and heard this news?
I think it was a surprise at the speed and how it comes just after a few days after the media campaign. However, the visit of Mohammed bin Zayed to Trump just a days before Trump's visit to Riyadh did indicate that there's something going on in terms of coordination between Washington and Abu Dhabi. And there was sort of information about why this visit just happened days before the other meeting will take place in Riyadh. I think there was sort of expectation. I think what make things move quickly. I think the leaks of the Emirati ambassador in Washington, which I think pushed things to move quickly, as we said this morning.
Okay, so we have to draw lines on this one, and this is what I want to explain to our viewers, is exactly who's on what side and how they support. Abdulaziz, if I start with you, who are the Qatari allies? Who can they turn to now? If they're being shut out by everyone else, who's around?
I think still there are some allies. I mean, I'm not sure that we are talking about the green light from United States, but if you go back to Tillerson statements just a while ago, he said he would like to see the GCC unified. He said that the best solution is a dialogue and for everybody to sit on the table and to talk over these topics. Is it like he's giving like a media statement and saying something else in the back? I'm not really quite sure, but I would still think that there are a huge American interests in the country, as the military base is still in the country, as the American oil companies are still in the country. It's a financial hub for a lot of expats in the area. It's a huge stake and it's a huge interest of so many countries. Therefore, I mean, I'm not sure that the United States is not still a partner or an ally here. Europe is the same thing. China, India.
What about Turkey? What about
Turkey?
Iran?
Turkey is a very strong ally here. But it's not about one ally. It's about the collection of allies that you need to rely on.
Okay, David Hurst, where does Qatar turn to right now? As Abdulaziz was saying, it seems like the end goal is to get people talking again, but in the interim, what does Qatar do?
Well, I think where everyone is looking for the reaction of Turkey, I think that's a really, really key country. As you know, there's a military agreement between Turkey and Qatar. So far, Turkey has said things which are non-committal. It's a shame. The two sides should get talking to each other, but they haven't really committed themselves to defend or to support Qatar, and that will be absolutely key. And that will, of course, be Erdogan's decision alone. And so far, he hasn't spoken himself. I mean, I think what our colleague said about American interests in Qatar is vitally important. I mean, another way of casting this is that the hosts of a CIA drone base in Saudi Arabia and the hosts of a deep-sea water port in the Emirates and a major American air base in Dhafra in the Emirates are basically laying siege to the hosts of CENTCOM, which is based in Qatar. So in terms of logic or sense, this reads more like a plot out of Catch-22. That this makes no sense from American foreign policy at all, because each of these countries host vital US military assets. And that's not, of course, to say anything about vital American oil or financial interests in Qatar. So, and at the moment, I think America is on the fence, but events may push it to have some at least backroom conversations with the Emirates and the Saudis, because what they don't want to see is more instability in the region. There is enough as it is.
Mahjoub Zouairi, can you tell us about Iran's place here? I know that's one of your specialty subjects in your role at Qatar University. It has spoken quite strongly in favour of Qatar today, or at least said that this is not the way to handle this. Again, is there likely support coming from their actual material support as well?
You know, one of the ramifications of this crisis is actually empowering Iran in the region, and this basically reminds me of what happened in 2006 when they tried to isolate Hamas. Hamas went towards Iran. Today they are repeating the same scenario, where basically they try to put Qatar in the corner, and Iran says, okay, they have to negotiate the matter. However, we are ready to help, and this is what the one of the officials in the president's office said. You know, we are ready to provide Qatar of its need. I think this crisis will empower Iran, and this basically works against what the whole summit, Riyadh summit, targeted Iran. I think this basically Iran trying now to say, you know, we are the good guy in the region. We are not causing troubles. And this also reminds us of something else about Iran policy in the region, which Iran does not have a plan or does not basically prefer any change of geopolitics in the region. So basically this will affect any move of changing in the region. I think this also will bring.
Though, just jump in there, Mahjoub. Is there a risk that we have another? I don't like the phrase proxy war, but another battleground for Iran versus Saudi Arabia?
I don't think so. That will happen. Iran will not be interested to do so. However, Iran will try this time to work with Ankara. From this morning, there was a lot of debates between Tehran and Ankara, and I think both countries have interest to have the region stable. More than this, I think there is also a lot of eyes on China, Japan. What will be the response to this crisis? One of the interesting, I think, related to Iran actually is the response of Russia, and I think Russia also was negative so far. Russia said everything. This is something should be solved internally. But let's not forget that a few weeks ago, Mohammed bin Salman was in Moscow just after the visit of Trump. So I think Iran at the middle here tried to show itself as a good guy. And will try to show that they have no interest to seek another crisis in the region, and I think this is one of the aim to Hassan Rouhani to present his second presidency as a mediator and a positive player in the region.
Okay, gentlemen, let's flip the coin and look at the other sides here. David Hurst, why don't I start with you? Short story, and again, just explaining for our viewers here, what does Saudi Arabia want? Is this simply about power? Is it about trying to put Qatar back into its box almost?
Well, I would like to reply by asking another question. Is this Saudi Arabia, or is this one faction within Saudi Arabia?
Okay.
The person who's been most associated with this policy is the Deputy Crown Prince, who's Mohammed bin Salman. He's only the Deputy Crown Prince. The Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Nayef, has said absolutely nothing, and he has very different policies from these. It's much more pro-Qatar and pro-Turkey. He, however, is saying nothing. Because crown princes do say nothing until it's their turn. So what is the motivation for this? I think at least part of the motivation for this is an internal one. It's to cement, shore up Mohammed bin Salman's power. And if he wins this round, I think he's only just a short step away from gaining the throne himself. The second motivation, I think, for this is that this really is a payback for 2 decades of Qatar supporting what I would call the Arab Spring. Not necessarily Islamists, but democracy, for Al Jazeera's coverage of Egypt, in Libya, for instance, the support of the Tripoli government. In all of these conflicts, apart from Yemen, the Qatar and Turkey have been on the opposite sides to Egypt, to the Emirates and to Saudi. Qatar, or the people supporting Qatar, would call this the counter-revolution. But it's very, very clear ideologically where the split is. And this is the culmination of a very, very big internal conflict. Hence the use of the word terrorist. This is a very, very badly used word. And what Egypt calls a terrorist is not what Qatar calls a terrorist. And so there's a very fundamental split here. And I think what's happened is that the arrival of Trump has basically given the green light to the sort of final denouement of a very, very big conflict that's been brewing for at least 2 decades.
David, you actually preempted my next question, and I was going to throw this to Abdulaziz here in the studio. This idea that, yes, 20 years of Qatar trying to assert itself, the work of the now father Emir, Sheikh Hamad, who wanted to turn Qatar into an influencer and clearly did that. But this is the payback. This is a cumulative effect. And now Saudi Arabia and its allies have said, enough, khalas, as we say here.
Yeah, but you know, if you go back even to Donald Trump himself when he came to Riyadh, and in one of his statements, he said Qatar is a strategic partner against terrorists. This is really a statement that supports and endorses that Qatar is against terrorism. If you go back to the retweet of the former U.S. ambassadors in Qatar, she's been retweeting all of the tweets, just endorsing the same idea that Qatar is a strategic, really a partner in fighting against ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and terrorists in general. My concern that isolating Qatar or trying to isolate Qatar or destabilize the country will have an impact not only on Qatar, it will have impact on the whole region, actually.
Well, it is. People are being, nationals are being told they have to leave.
Exactly. Not only this, it will reach to India, to China, to Europe, to even United States, to other countries as well. Therefore, I think it needs a very proactive diplomacy from the Qatari ends to explain the threats and the impacts of such behavior. And from the other side, it needs a proactive also diplomacy from China, from India, from United States, from Europe, from all these countries to step in and to really try to resolve this in a very peaceful manner.
Will Qatar have to make some concessions, do you think?
I mean, this should be put on the table, actually. As Tillerson said, okay, come together, have a dialogue, talk over the issues, list all these issues as you have done 2014. Yeah, exactly. So the concession should be negotiated and discussed over the table in a very transparency matter.
David Hurst, Abdulaziz has given me a very diplomatic answer there. Can I get the same question to you? Concessions, what do you think Qatar might have to do, certainly in the short term?
I'm certainly not sure what concessions there could be. I mean, the last time this happened, I think they expelled some senior members of the Muslim Brotherhood, but that was more token than a real change of policy. I think at the moment it really does depend, you see, on what the game plan is. Is this just a verbal series of moves, or will economic measures really bite? At the moment, there are 900 lorries crossing the Saudi border a day. 40% of Qatar's food comes through Saudi Arabia. If this is a siege, if this is a real economic blockade, followed by other action, I don't know, then
well,
the
Qatar
game
won't
plan
be able
will
to survive
very,
like
very
that, will it?
serious.
I mean, if it is a full, as you say, economic siege or blockade like that, it can't go on like that.
Well, it did survive the last time this happened when the borders were closed. But if the point I'm trying to get at is that if it depends what the objective of this assault, this operation is, and it has been pre-planned. It's not just off the cuff. If it is to radically change the policy of Qatar to make it a form of Bahrain, then I think I'm not sure how you can negotiate that. It is a fundamental loss of sovereignty, as the Emir and as the Qatari authorities have said today, that this is an attack on their sovereignty as an independent country. If, however, this is just a shot across the bows and it stops here, then I think that is negotiable because there are measures in which you can take to de-escalate a diplomatic crisis. It depends on what the game plan is.
Mahjoub, why don't you pick up on that and tell us what you think the game plan is?
You know, at the end of the day, not only what Qatar can present, what the others can present. I mean, what they expect from Qatar to present or give a concession. I mean, at the end of the day, Qatar has its own foreign policy, has defined its own national interest. Based on that, they define their alliances, regardless who are those alliances. I mean, in case of Saudi Arabia, for example, has historical ties with Muslim Brotherhood. Overnight, they give this up. Now they have maybe normal relations with Doha. This doesn't mean this is the fault of Doha. I think what the question remains on what other countries can present to serve the interest of Doha if Doha want to give a concession. If they want, for example, if in the decisive storm, Doha went with Saudi Arabia, with this coalition led by Saudi Arabia, and they contributed militarily and financially to the whole operation. Why this was not enough from the Doha side, and more important, I think in the case of Yemen, there was more economic support, even with the situation on Libya. I think what is required is a specific role from Qatar. What I see that both countries, Abu Dhabi and Riyadh, they were drained economically and politically in both countries, in Yemen and in Libya, and I can add Egypt to this. And I think what they try to do now is changing the direction to blame someone for all of this. And I think the blame now is targeting Doha, because the drain, the economic and political drain in both countries was really huge. The decisive storm lasts now for nearly 2 years. There is no serious outcome of that. And I think this adds more pressure economically and politically on those countries.
It's going to be fascinating, isn't it, the way it all plays out. I'm sorry, gentlemen, I think we could probably carry on for another half hour, but we're running out of time there. Mahjoub Zouairi and David Hurst and Abdulaziz Alhorr joining me here in the studio. Thank you so much. You can watch this program again anytime, or any of our previous programs. Head to aljazeera.com for further discussion. You can hop on our Facebook page at Facebook. facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. The conversation's online on Twitter as well. We are at AJ Inside Story. I'm Kamahl Santamaria from the whole team. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again soon.